And you need to have a bit of risk taking and be able to test, learn, fail, learn, and come back again in a different way without fear of retaliation or losing your job, without innovation. Like where this is what drives not only the beauty industry, but the watch industry as well, too.
Welcome to Maker's Mindset. I'm your host, Nancy Twine, and in this episode, I'm in conversation with Ginny Wright, CEO of Audemars Piguet Americas. With a robust background in luxury brand management, Ginny has held pivotal roles, including president of Kiehl's and global deputy GM at Ralph Lauren Fragrances, along with strategic positions at L'Oréal Luxe. Known for her strategic and innovative approach to driving growth, Ginny has significantly elevated brand prestige and consumer engagement at the companies she's served. Her leadership at Audemars Piguet underscores a commitment to excellence and transformative luxury experiences, driving the iconic watchmaker's growth and prominence in the competitive luxury market. Let's go ahead and jump in. Well, welcome, Ginny. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you today. And you've had a lot of transitions over the past few years. I think during the pandemic 4 years ago, you made the transition from an executive at L'Oréal to the luxury watchmaking category through your role as CEO of Americas of Audemars Piguet. Talk to me a bit about that transition and how did you get up the learning curve of learning about luxury watchmaking?
Well, first, I love the beauty industry. L'Oréal was my home for many years. I learned so much there. And I thought, you know what? You can only have one lifetime, and why don't you try something new and take a bit of a risk? And I went into an industry that I knew nothing about, other than the fact that what I thought was really interesting was that they were doubling down on physical retail when people were running to e-commerce. And it's unique to our industry. It's unique to our brand, the reason why we don't have e-commerce. And then I took a big humility pill for about 6 months to recognize that I'm just going to have to listen, learn, observe, be curious, and ask questions. And it took a good 6 months to feel comfortable, and I think a full year to really understand the nuances of it.
Well, I'm a big believer that you can take lessons from one career and apply them to the next. And I'm so curious, what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned as a beauty executive that you're now applying to this new role?
First and foremost is actually putting the client at the center of everything that you do. And in beauty, if you go into Sephora, that's what they preach and that's what you better practice. Yes. So, and in order to do that, you have to have you need to understand your client segmentation and your consumer segmentation. And to understand the nuances between different people, what triggers them and why. And this became extremely important in watches as we're trying to bring new clients in. Third is understanding, taking that information and creating a consumer decision journey. Because people buy watches for completely different reasons. And I think classically, we've always worked towards the collector. And now when we're bringing more women and Gen Z, it's not based upon that at all. And the last thing actually came from an individual at L'Oréal. Her name was Carol Hamilton.
I know Carol.
I mean, she's amazing. Who doesn't know
Icon.
Carol? She's amazing. And I've learned so much through her throughout my career, and I owe so much to her. But she would have a town hall every year, and people would submit anonymous questions. And she was just audacious. She would read the question and answer it truthfully. Wow. And I took that nugget from her. And every month I host an AP Americas Connect where people can submit any question anonymously to really create a culture of transparency and trust.
Yeah, that's so important. And I want to go back to some of that psychology you were talking about, because we were at dinner a couple of weeks ago, and I learned that you actually studied some consumer psychology or behavior, things of that world. And I'm wondering how that background and those studies have allowed you to have just a deeper perspective into how the consumer sees the world, and how do you leverage that with, brand management and marketing?
Well, I remember I was actually in Costa Rica at a surf camp, and I took a book with me on vacation, and it was called Why Do Beautiful People Have More Daughters? And it was written by 2 evolutionary psychologists. And it's really understanding the why, especially at key moments in our life. Why in our 20s are we willing to take risk? That's when the Beatles, created 6 or 7 albums in a period of 5 years. Yeah. That you're willing to do things in your 20s because you're not necessarily tied down yet.
Right.
And your 30s and your 40s change and evolve. And then obviously your 50s and even 60s, that risk taking can come back a little bit, which is interesting where you are in your life. And so it's really understanding that reptilian why, where you may not be conscious of it, but below the surface, there's something in your brain tells you that. And this works brilliantly well, not only in watches, but especially in fragrances. Like, I mean, because you're selling a dream and you're selling part of that and to present that dream as part of an evolutionary behavior, to be more attractive, to be to the opposite sex, or to seem more powerful to the same sex. It's really interesting.
That is so, so interesting. So how do you think entrepreneurs tactically can leverage some of that consumer psychology to really enhance some of their, brand loyalty and even just client acquisition?
Yeah, I think that if they understand the why do they need your product or why do they need your service? And then why do they want your service in particular? And so when you go down that path of why, it kind of helps you bring you down to hopefully what makes you unique and different and kind of your sense of purpose of what you are as a brand. And I think that there's other steps you have to make along the way to really tighten that up so that there is an inference and there's a difference when they see your product or your experience compared to your competitor.
Absolutely. I love that why framing because I feel like when a lot of people are starting their businesses, they think about the mission statement and they think about the values, which is so important, but honing in on like the why, what it is you offer specifically, why is that going to make the difference? I think is so important. So the Audemars Piguet brand has stood the test of time. I think you all are turning 150 next year.
150 young next year, yes.
Which is just crazy. What do you think are some of the core principles of creating a legacy brand and also a brand that has just a really solid love from its consumer base?
I've been so fortunate. I've gotten to work with like 2 or 3 consumer love brands in my life and where people run up to you and like want to express the stories and how they purchased it and why and how it's changed their lives. So I'm very fortunate to have that. I wish I had a magic wand to wave and say, here's how you make a love brand. But when I really thought about the core principles behind it, you need to be detailed and distinct. And then I also think it's like, do you feel like that they can belong to a sense of community? Is there a bigger belonging than just the product itself? Do you feel like you're a part of something bigger? And last, I think that creativity and content, some entrepreneurs, not all, think about their product being online only. And they forget when they put it in store, which does happen a lot, right? We go from D2C online and then you kind of realize you need to expand your business model. And it doesn't look the same on the shelf as it did on a website. So you really have to think that forward in terms of the creative of your packaging, of your coloring, how it's going to differentiate between your other products on a shelf, paying attention to those details.
I want to hone in on one of those C's you mentioned, which was community, because I think what you all are doing with the AP houses around the globe is so unique. So tell us, what is AP House and how does that align with your overall strategy?
The Audemars Piguet House was just this decision to really kind of immerse people in our brand, but as if it were our living room, dining room, and terrace. And while we sell watches there and they're on display, it really is a sense of a place to sit, have a conversation. I actually think the AP House New York, where we're sitting today, has the best oat milk latte in the entire city.
Oh, really?
Yes. And it feels like just a way to relax, have a conversation, an hour, hour and a half, and then also bring your friends. A lot of times you're going to say, I'm going to go shopping. And they're like, I don't want to do that. But like, hey, I'm going to go hang out in this really cool club feel. Yeah. And it really does feel like a private club, but everybody is invited to it. Mm-hmm. And I just took the red eye in last night, where we just opened up the AP House Mexico City last night.
So exciting. So how many are there now? Because I've been to the one in Hollywood or West Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now we have 4 in the Americas. We have St. Bart's, which was actually our first.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a beautiful, petite little AP House in St. Bart's. And then we have the AP House New York and Meatpacking. And then AP House Los Angeles, now Mexico City. And we'll have 2 more coming next year.
Well, going back to 150 years, I mean, not only does it take innovation, but it takes really concerted strategies, right, to stay relevant and maintain longevity. And I feel like AP has been navigating the balance of staying relevant while keeping core to the heritage for quite some time. I know back in, I think, 2005, you all were the first watch brand to partner with a hip hop mogul like Jay-Z. And then you had the LeBron partnership, and then most recently, Travis Scott. So talk to me about how you think about keeping the brand relevant at the forefront of culture without losing the heritage.
I think that specifically in the US, where they're kind of in the heartbeat of culture, because that's what we export around the world, what I love about AP, it keeps one foot in the Valley de Joux of Le Brassus, which is the rich heritage of the family who still owns the company, right? These are founders that we want to protect and love this brand. But at the same point in time, this brand has a free spirit to it, a bit of an edge, a bit of a rebellious. This is the kind of, to me, the rock star kind of the watch world. And it is a global brand in the sense that it's taken inspiration from around the world, and particularly the United States and our culture. To your point, you referenced Jay-Z. This was 2005. I mean, and the previous CEO, he recognized that hip hop's just not a music. It will actually drive culture, and not just in the US. And so we're constantly having to stay on top of that. But a lot of it comes from listening to our clients. We have so many Gen Z clients who tell us what's cool or bring their parents into our stores. Wow. So we're just always listening to what's happening in culture.
Definitely. And let's go a little bit deeper there, because you do spend a lot of time in the field, quote unquote. You're meeting with clients, you're learning things. How do those interactions really help you think about innovation and sort of what's next for the brand? How do you leverage those interactions to create ideation?
Simply having a conversation. But I think that the closest you are to your clients, the more insights that you can extract and have. And what I appreciate about our new global CEO, Ilaria Resta, is that she really is a big believer in that and bringing us all together from around the world and having rich conversation. But even what we've done, and we're focusing on women recently, is I talked to a lot of our female clients and collectors to understand what drove them, like what made you want to purchase AP, what connected to you. Was it design? Was it the brand? Was it a friend? And we really use that qualitative information to form opinion.
Wow. Yeah. And I want to talk more about that because obviously, luxury watches have typically been a very male-dominated category. And I feel like AP is making a very intentional effort to bring more women to the table through events and developing relationships. Talk more about the vision for that. And what do you hope to see in the next 10 years?
At the end of 2021, we had 16% self-purchasing women that they went in and bought the watch for themselves. Today, we're going to end the year close to 26%.
Wow.
So it's a good 10 point. In the next year, we'll be at 30. And by 2027, we'll be 40%. And the reason why this is that, I think that the world is changing. And for example, I'm wearing a mini oak today. Again, this actually came from a lot of women wearing vintage. And we were like, this is super cool.
Yeah,
like, this is something to bring back, but with a big twist.
Absolutely.
But I have male clients asking for this watch, not for their girlfriends or their sisters or their mothers, but for themselves. Wow. And this is the big shift in the watch world that we've seen, where I have women wearing 41 millimeter open works, which is usually you see on big guys. And I have guys who are now wearing what would be considered a smaller wrist size. So it's all being mixed up now, which I think it makes it more fun.
Totally. And I love that too, because you're right. People are buying watches for different reasons. Sometimes they like the style. Sometimes it's a feeling. This was actually one of my first watches. And I was just so sort of struck by this like black on black and the boldness and the distinctiveness. And it definitely gives you just a different sense of being when you're wearing the watch. It's really sort of hard to conceptualize, but it's like, for me, it's having that like great hair day, right? Or like that same feeling.
What we're seeing in the big evolution that we've had to shift is that just like yourself, you're coming to the brand and buying a watch, not because of that, but because of maybe it was an accomplishment. Maybe it was a deal that you closed or a bonus that you got or, the baby that you had or the move you made across the country, whatever the reason why. Or maybe it is just something that makes you feel good and it's a statement about your style. And so we have to talk to those groups in different ways. So
absolutely. For entrepreneurs that are scaling a business, it's not just about getting that initial sale, but it's like, how do you keep this client coming back for more over time? And you're in a really unique industry where, the product is expensive, right? And it's a little hard to get. So how do you keep people attracted to the brand, knowing that, transactions aren't happening as frequently as other categories?
For us, it's so not a transactional relationship, right? While that transaction may have happened, to me, actually what happens afterwards is super important. And we really stay connected even after the purchase. You may not purchase for a year, but we're still going to reach out to you, still send you a card, still invite you to an event, because we still want you to be a part of that AP community, even though maybe you're not in the market right that moment for a watch. Yeah. And I think that's the reason why our clients love to come to our events. And then we've also made new connections at our events as well, too. There's a story where Serena Williams met an entrepreneur at one of our events, Daniela Pearson. They connected and invested in each other's
I love
companies.
that.
And that's what we do. Like, we have stories like this all the time where people connect. And I think if a brand can figure out how to connect that community, connect the people that love each other,
Right.
they're your biggest megaphone to keep that going.
Absolutely. And it's something actually we talk a lot about in beauty, just because the landscape has become so competitive. It can't just be about having a great product, because there are a lot of great products out there. But it's really about what are you doing to enhance that connectivity with your audience, create those special moments, and that, secret sauce, really. That's really what it is, that helps you to build something more than just that product transaction. And I think whether you're a luxury brand or not, there's definitely lessons to be learned from that mindset.
Yeah. And we even go a little bit, we actually write handwritten notes after as well, too, because it's not something that every brand still does. You get the email saying, thank you so much for your purchase, and this is all about your product. But a handwritten note from a boutique director, from my retail director, or myself goes a long way. I get so many thank you notes from me writing a thank you note to them.
Because it's very thoughtful and it's very intentional and it feels personalized. And I think that's where consumers see value also. It's just the time that someone takes to make them feel like they're someone special, someone who's appreciated. And just even little simple things like that. I love it. A handwritten note, right? I listened to one of your interviews recently, and you stated, I like to transform teams and make them high functioning. And you've obviously had a lot of experience building teams and coming up with strategies to drive results. But talk about how you go about building that team, and what do you look for in your people?
I look for people who keep curiosity, that have humility, and want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, so that they're striving for one thing and it's not about the individual all the time. And I do love star players, but I want them to be a great point guard, use a basketball, to be able to to provide an assist and to have that. And then I want to have people where I trust them day one. And you start 100% trust with me, because I think that the more you can trust in your teams, I think the more you build that authenticity, that true relationship, and that sense of safety. Because with psychological safety on a team or in a workplace, that's where innovation can thrive. And without it,
because people stay silent. They're scared to share
They're afraid to share. And you need to have a bit of risk taking, and be able to test, learn, fail, learn, and come back again in a different way without fear of retaliation or losing your job. Because without innovation, where this is what drives not only the beauty industry, but the watch industry as well, too.
Absolutely. And where does that come from for you? Is it something that you saw demonstrated by a leader that you were working for? Is it just part of your own personal core value set, a mix of both? Where do you think that comes from?
It was an evolution for me. I have to admit, when I became a first-time manager, I don't think I was the best manager. Same. And I would get irritated probably easily, and they could see it on my face, why did you do it this way? And then with some coaching, and I think this is the gift you can give to yourself, is find someone that can help guide you through, look at the perspective differently. And so instead of giving them a hard time because it wasn't exactly what the mission was, ask them a question like, hey, if I gave you 3 days more, what would you do differently? And I think that doesn't demoralize people. It actually incentivizes people. And I think that that's hyper important, but I'm still learning to this day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, creating that safe space for your team to share that feedback, that's what makes it all possible. And I want to take it a step further, because I'm a founder. And for me, when I'm building out an executive team, it feels like such a personal thing. And I really try to find people who are low ego, that want to be a steward of my vision, but also someone who's different than me, right? And thinks a little bit different. And you are obviously a steward of the Audemars Piguet brand, and you're upholding sort of the mission and vision of the family. How do you do that, though, while also keeping your own perspective on what the brand needs, even if that may be different than what some other people think?
That's a really interesting question. And I think that what we created is the what together as a team, where I may have some influence on that, but We every day have to think about Audemars Piguet, is at least in the Americas, is that we want this brand to be the most respected and unbreakable luxury watch brand. And with that comes how we behave ethically, how we represent the brand in everything that we do. Even if you're on social media or walking down the street, you're representing a family and a brand that Mr. Audemars, and the Piguet family still exists today. The second thing is that we really want to stay relevant. And third is to stay, I think the more that we can be client-centric and closer to the clients, that works. And then the fourth is every day is a good day to work. And if you try to keep these kind of four things top of mind, that helps, I think, frame how to keep that brand going, but do it in your own way. And I think if you have kindness, respect, and integrity, then your values show up every day.
Absolutely. And obviously leading a brand, especially a brand like Audemars Piguet, is a big responsibility. And I'm sure even though it's a ton of fun, there are also a lot of challenges and things that you just simply can't plan for. What strategies have you found most helpful from like a growth mindset that help you to, just build that resilience and perseverance, even when those times are so challenging?
We come together and figure it out together and bring diversity of thought together to see things that you may be blind to.
Yeah.
I'm quite the optimist. I'm like,
I
we're
love
going to
that.
figure out,
Yeah.
we're going to figure this out. And I love problem solving, but I like to have people there, but did you think of this, this, and this? And then we settle on a plan, pick it apart, pull it back together, and then go. That's when you're in a bit of a pickle. You need to figure out a way, like these are the steps that we're going to have to take one by one to get them done, and stay connected on that until you're kind of in the clear.
Totally. And I think what's key, though, is leading with that optimism piece, because I'm sure for any manager, when there's a problem, you don't want people to come and say, oh, this is the problem. We have to accept it. You want to say, hey, this is the problem and this is a possible solution. How do we get there? And I think just keeping that like optimistic mindset perspective at the forefront, no matter how tough it is, I think creates that North Star for you and the team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in a previous podcast too, you opened up about the role that therapy has played for you, just managing the chaos, right, of being in the luxury sector, whether that was beauty, now watchmaking. How has your experience with therapy influenced your approach to leadership?
It is to try to have as much self-awareness and situational awareness as possible. I also have figured out the things that trigger me into a place and not to my best self, right? And so if I can recognize those steps that take me on the road where I don't want to go, right, I've learned how to say, okay, hold on, take a step back, breathe, maybe sleep on it before reacting. There are two more things. One is to forgive yourself. I used to beat myself up all the time with racing thoughts, and I really learned how to forgive myself, admit mistake, and then move on instead of wearing that down and creating cortisol and all those other horrible things through your body. Right. And the other tip that I learned that I carry with me all the time is that it's a way to reflect and kind of recenter yourself in a bad situation, which is you take your thumb and your forefinger and you think about the time that you loved someone so much, or that feeling of love. You do it the second with your middle finger, you make that press and you put yourself into somebody else who loves you. And I always think about my daughter or my kids or even my dog, like wagging its tail when they see me. They're so excited. And the last time I do it over here on this finger, and I think about the time I spoke my truth. And that really helps ground me back to who I am and what my values are in even the most stressful of times.
Oh, I love that so much. And, I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because oftentimes when you're so busy, it can feel hard to make time for things like coaching or therapy. But I find that it's almost fundamental to your success, right? It's like showing up to a meeting with your top client. Like, you have to do it to drive business, and you have to take care of yourself and invest in your own mental well-being and development so that you can show up your best for your people. And I think it's so great. And obviously a testament to how it's shaped your leadership. A lot of the audience of Maker's Mindset are entrepreneurs in all different categories. But for those entrepreneurs who are looking to infuse a sense of luxury into their brand, what are some things that they can do that, don't require a massive budget? You talked a little bit about the thoughtful handwritten notes. But are there other things that, brands of all types should be thinking about to create that special high touch interaction?
It can be quite difficult, especially if you're starting on an online D2C world. But I think that there are nuances that you can do. The more that you can personalize, the more that you can even customize to make it feel like that is their own. And I also think that, even though I mentioned it before, that paying attention to detail, I didn't realize it until I stepped out of it, but how much detail is important in luxury. And so you really need to think about that. And you also need to make sure you look distinct and unique and like nobody else, so that people can always spot you. The thing that's really hard to do is to give that sense of either that fear of missing out or that fear of scarcity, right?
Right.
That drives so much of what luxury is. You have that, I want that. And if you can figure that out for your own space, it's amazing.
And I love what you said about, the attention to detail, which actually requires you to slow down a bit. And I think too, whether you're running a huge brand like AP or you're scaling your business, I think sometimes the thing that comes in the way of that is you're just doing so much. And I always try to tell people to create those moments on your calendar where you can just have sort of those blue sky moments to yourself so that you can be thoughtful and really sort of reflect on those types of ideas that, you just described as being essential for creating those special moments. But you have to have the headspace to do that.
It's so important what you just said. And I don't always live in this matrix, but I have to look at things and say urgent, important, not urgent, but important. And I should be, and if you're a founder or CEO, probably spending at least 25 to 20% of your time in that bracket of not urgent, but important. Because that's, what are you going to look at, not necessarily at that moment? And then we can all get distracted by the not urgent, not important. Like, oh, I need to play Wordle. I need to answer this email. No, you don't. No, you don't. And to carve out time on your calendar to do those big sky, do those big strategy, take the time to brainstorm.
Yes.
Outside of the four walls of your house or your office well too.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit more about creating space and some semblance of balance. Most people don't believe you can achieve total balance, but some sense of it, because obviously you have a very busy career. I believe your husband works in finance. Everyone's busy. You're a mom. How do you find the time to take care and nurture you? And what are some of those routines or practices you've created as part of your daily habits or weekly rituals?
Not perfect at it. Like this week, my daughter was at a soccer match and I forgot that she had her tutor. So, things slip through the cracks. Yeah. But what I do and I appreciate about my kids and my husband and my dog that allow me to do this is that I do have time to work out. It's really important for me to have a physical, get the physicality, get all of that energy out and negativity out. And then I have the most amazing girlfriends in the world. We've got each other's backs. And to me, that's the reason why I believe in helping out women founders. I will take time out of my schedule to talk to them, to help them, because I just see when women work together, when they support each other, just great things happen.
So that was actually the last of my questions, but I just want to open it up to you. Is there anything else that you want to share that you're passionate about? Again, the audience are primarily entrepreneurs, but also, executives at different stages of their career. Are there any just power nuggets that you just want to put out there for people to absorb and meditate on?
You know how we talked earlier about the why for your brand? Do the why for yourself. And I did this exercise probably 8 years ago. And it was it was an offsite in Brazil. And you keep what is important to me? And list your 3 or 4 or 5 things that are important to you. And then ask why. But why is that then important? And you keep going down. And that's what helped me build really what my inner belief system and what drives me. And so that's really helpful when you get into a situation, you're like, should I do this or not? You kind of ask that question to yourself. And mine is about righting wrongs and a sense of justice and a sense of fairness. And then I think what you've said earlier is take time for yourself. I know it seems urgent. I know it's this deadline is looming and you've got to send that, but just to take 5 minutes or even 15 minutes just to walk away, take a breath, shift your mind, and then come back to it. I promise you'll probably be so much more creative when you come back to it.
I totally agree. Well, before we wrap up, Ginny, we're actually going to pivot into something that I love to do. It's called Five Fire Facts, which is a rapid fire interview just for people to get to know you a little bit more candidly and personally. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. The book that has most influenced your leadership style.
Dare to Lead by Brené Brown.
A city that always inspires you.
Paris. I live there.
Same.
I live there.
Paris.
It's great. Love it.
Must-have beauty product for a busy day.
It CC cream because it covers all my rosacea and it has a built-in SPF 50.
Is that what you're wearing right now? Because you're like glowing.
It's my everyday.
Love it. Favorite way to stay active.
So I go to Recess by Bevan Prince, another female founder, and she has her own spin studio in Wilmington, North Carolina, and that is it's my favorite treat.
Favorite watch from the Audemars Piguet collection.
Like that is impossible. You know what? I'm going to go with what I have on today, which is the Royal Oak Mini in yellow
so
gold.
Beautiful.
But I will say, when you get into watches, perpetual calendars, which tell time for 150 years over leap years, with nothing electronic in the watch. It's amazing that we can create basically putting a sports car on a wrist. So a perpetual calendar is also, any of one of them with the AP family are my favorites.
So fascinating. Well, Ginny, thank you so much for being here today. This was so fun.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It's always great to see you.
So to stay connected with Ginny, the Maker's Mindset community, and me, check out all the details in the description below, and check out Spotify or Apple Podcasts to hear a few bonus reflections from me on this episode. And don't forget to subscribe to this series, leave a review, and share this episode with your community. Thanks so much for tuning in.